Everybody, welcome back to the Casino Business Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Shacklett, CEO of TRIO360, the best host and player development software on the planet. We are back in our series, Startup Conversations with Juan and Craig. Juan Romero, CEO of Volante Software. Juan, how are you, sir?
Doing all right, man. Apologize for the raspy voice. I'm getting over a cold and a lot of demos in a week, but I'm happy to be here. Everything's going extremely well. How about yourself?
Yeah, we've been on fire. We were just talking about that since G2E. I think we've both been like that hockey stick trajectory, and it's been exciting. And what I thought would be a fun topic today is kind of the overall theme of this interview series is kind of being the underdog, so to speak, and punching above our weight and going against bigger competitors. And I know you just want to deal against bigger competitor. We've won, I guess every deal we've won has been against bigger competitors. And it's a mindset, and there's some things that landmines and things you have to think about when competing against bigger competitors. So why don't we talk about that? Like, what is let's see, what's your kind of mindset if somebody says, well, hey, you're a younger company, you don't you're not as big, why should I go with you? Like, what's kind of your stance?
Yeah, I guess my stance on that is probably like just talk to our customers, right? I mean, fortunately, we have some really, really large properties. One that's extremely large in particular that we've worked very closely with since very early on in the inception of our company and our product. So, to me, it's really like I understand where you're coming from. I've worked with companies of all sizes. To me, I'm saying go talk to the people who have been using our product about not only the product but also their experience with us and our customer service, our implementation, our approach to building things. And I think to me, that really speaks volumes, and it's done very well for us.
Yeah, I'd agree with that wholeheartedly. It's the first customer, when you're a small company, the first customer is the hardest. Mm-hmm. And then obviously the second customer is the next hardest, but it's easier than the first. And then as you get more, then that apprehension, because nobody wants to take a shot on an upstart and it's like blows up in their face.
Sure.
So the more proof you have that, hey, we know what we're doing, the more likely they are to go with you. Because the fact is, I know it's the same for Volante and Slot Track and the software you guys are selling. Our demos knock it out of the park. Like, our software, anyone listening to this, is better than everybody else in host and player development, period. End of story. It's better objectively. You're going to make more money using our software. But I get it. It's like, when you see a new offense coming up in football, it always starts in high school, where the risk is, high school coach would be like, whatever, I'm not going to get fired. And then if it goes well there, then it goes to college. And the last adopter is always the NFL, because those coaches have worked their entire lives to get to a certain spot, and they don't want to blow it by doing some like tricky new offense that doesn't work at that level. So they're going to let other people test it first. So for us, it's like, man, we've got the goods, and it's just, for me, it's about being patient and just saying, okay, all right, fine. Not now. You're not ready. You're not the early adopter. We'll come back to you in a year, because our numbers that we're getting with our customers are great.
Yeah, and I think, for us, piggybacks on everything you just talked about, but, for one of the most like eye-opening aspects was really looking at the type of person that was receptive to our product, right? So with everything you just said, and we've had this conversation before, people are basically putting a portion or of their reputation on the line, because they got to go not only sell and justify the cost of our products, but they also have to justify the part that you just touched upon, right? Which is, like two of the first questions is like, how big is your team? How long have you been in business? Where are you installed, right? Like, those is like the trifecta. So they're taking on kind of that risk. And so for us, it's like, we're extremely loyal to those people who have displayed those types of behaviors and the type of like attitude and mentality that are conducive to our product, right? So that was the biggest thing we learned is, like you said, getting that first one was the hardest, but what we really learned was like, what's the personality type of this individual? And as we were out in the market doing demos and gauging receptiveness, it was like, all right, so we can't look at the casino, we got to look at the person that's running the slot department. And if they exhibit these qualities, and if they're really sick of these aspects of the day-to-day operations and the offerings in terms of how things are having to be done through these various mechanisms and systems, then that's the person we need to focus as much energy on, right? And so it became less about the size of the property and the amount of games and their revenue than it was who's leading that charge, right? And who's gonna not only, you know, be willing to take that risk, but is going to push everything forward. And luckily we were able to find some of those people. At that point, it's like, you know, we get installed, and now because they took on that risk and belief in us, we pay them back by providing the best service that we possibly can for those people, right? I mean, it doesn't become a question of you know, the P&L and profitability. It's, if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do that, because that's what we, you know, led out with. That's how this person, you know, entered into the relationship, and that's what we owe them, in my eyes anyway.
That's well said. It's interesting to talk about the individual level beyond the company, because you're right, ultimately it comes down to a couple of decision makers. There's influencers, right? The users of the product can influence, but ultimately for you, maybe it's that VP of the slot department or whoever it is. For us, what's funny is I've been in situations where it's like we do a demo for GM or COO or somebody above that isn't ultimately like going to use the software, and maybe they'll give a VP the ultimate decision. And sometimes that can backfire, because if it's coming top down, then the people don't necessarily, sometimes don't want to be told like that you need something. I even had a situation too where it's like they didn't want to admit, because it was like the GM or the superior was on the demo, and I'd be asking questions that, if they're being open, it's like, oh yeah, no, we have problems with that. Yeah, gosh, you know, we hear this a lot. But that person, maybe they were threatened that the GM, because the GM was bringing in new software, maybe they thought like, oh, this is a testament to like, I'm not doing well, maybe I'm in danger. Because they were just like, oh no, we're great, we're good here. No, we don't need that. I trust it. No. So it's just funny how the personal dynamics can definitely overpower the company, you know, like even if it's the best thing in the world for a company to buy your software, buy our software, if that person that ultimately it makes that decision is against it, then deal's dead in the water.
Well, and you know, there's so many other things to consider, and I think we've discussed this before. But I mean, I tell my sales staff all the time, like, we can only do what we can do and control what we can control. There's so many variables and things that need to fall into place in order for any of these sales to occur at any level. I mean, we're not selling $300, you know, Microsoft Word licenses. I mean, we're selling enterprise level applications in spaces where there's a lot of change. So maybe the slot department loves it. Maybe it's not in their budget. Maybe, you know, COVID hits and now money gets shuffled around. Maybe the compliance people have reservations. Maybe there's some licensing aspects. Everything, you know, when we put out a demo and people, you know, our sales staff is like, I can't believe we didn't get that. Thought we are going to get it for sure. I'm like, you know, everything in its right time and place. And there's much more that's going on than just that little sliver that we're a part of, right? I mean, you're talking about or high level organizational change, and in order for that to happen, you just need input and buy-in from you know, at certain levels, but from multiple people. And so what I always tell them is, it might not happen today, but do our part as best as we possibly can, curate our story as best as we possibly can, and from there, when that timing is right, it'll happen.
Amen. And I like, what's funny is for us, I think the more clients we have, the more credibility and trust we've earned, the more of our story that we can tell. Because like where we came from, it, you know, it came out of URComped, right? We developed it, and we had to build this software to make our small team as efficient and effective as possible. And so it was literally like, we built this from scratch to make as much revenue as possible. And that's the origin story. But I wasn't very confident or comfortable telling it, because some casinos are like, oh, well, I don't know. Like, you know, it just made them uneasy that, well, are you some fly by night organization that's going to like just take that or take our info and use it at URComped? Well, and I could say, because the truth, no, like if we ever do that once, like our business is dead. Like we're not going to do that. That'd be the dumbest thing ever. But until there's 3, 4, 5, 10 casinos that are proving that we're not doing it, right? They're trusting us, then I can't really tell that story, even though it's super effective and it like adds credibility to, hey, this isn't new software. It's been being developed for 6, 7 years. And it's here's why it's designed so well. I've had to kind of avoid telling that story because I didn't want to raise any red flags or anything. But now that we're going and we're obviously everyone's data is safe, now I can tell that story and people are like, oh wow, that it makes it more rich, but it's something I just couldn't tell when we were too young.
Yeah, I was adding like ambiguity and non-clarity to a situation that you didn't want to muddy up, right? So I totally understand that. I mean, what's even worse is that some of our early customers we did and have non-disclosures with, I would love to be screaming all about them and everything they do, and we're not necessarily able to do that. You know what I mean? And there's nothing that I hate more than that. It's like, how many people do you have using this product? X amount. Can you give me names? Well, I can give you 4. Well, you just said 11. Well, yeah, but I have non-disclosures. And some of them understand. Some of them are like, that's the weirdest thing ever. And I'm like, right? I think it's weird too. And others are like, no, that's pretty standard. We do that. So yeah, it's just interesting that, these things that you have to be able to kind of cultivate and tell that story, but that trust is the number one factor like you're talking about. And really that's what you got to work on, right? For the first couple of years and the first couple of clients is just building that solid base that you can build from.
One thing I'm wrestling with or kind of mulling over, I want to hear your thoughts, is like that Underdog Swagger. Like, because I put on LinkedIn, I think you saw it, where it's like the Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, I saw that. That was cool. A lot of people like that.
Yeah, with TRIO, like decking the Big Russian, that was other host software. Because I read about Salesforce when Salesforce came out as the first cloud CRM, and it was going against the incumbents, and I can't think of the incumbents' names.
Yeah, Microsoft Dynamics, a bunch of places that are rooted in sure.
Yeah, and Salesforce was real like at the user conference for like the big incumbent. I don't think it was Oracle, but whatever. It was some huge company, and Salesforce had like protesters, or it was like, no more like hard software. I'm butchering the story, but basically they were very like, hey, we're the new kids in town, very much swaggery. And I don't know, part of me is tempted to do more of that, because it's like, I know we got the best stuff, and I kind of want to come out as like, hey, we're here, bring it on. You want to challenge us? You want to go head to head? Like, let's do it. But it's like, I like that for the company. It's not my personality, I'm like personally, but as a kind of a marketing angle where we don't have the budgets of the bigger ones that, have a team of sales reps that are going to be at every show and doing everything. Like what we have is great software. And I'm kind of like, do we just do kind of newsworthy stuff of like, hey, here we are, bring it on. Like, who wants to go head to head with us? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's, I couldn't have imagined maybe even like 3 years ago saying that we were a startup or saying that we're not the biggest company. I don't care now, right? But when I was in the space, it was like all this kind of like, don't ask, don't tell, right? Hopefully they don't ask, and then I don't have to tell how many people work for us, how many clients we have, because it was seen as such a negative, bad thing. Kind of like you were talking about earlier, no one wants to be first. They want to go with the sure thing. I think at some point, and it may have been when we picked up some clients, so it probably wasn't organic. But we got that. I mean, it was organic, but it wasn't like there was nothing shifted organizationally other than our client load, right? And so maybe that gave us some confidence that we didn't have behind before to tell our story, right? And so now, I mean, here we are having a podcast talking about everyday issues as, small startup companies with brand new offerings. It's something that we lean into heavily, right? And I mean, you and I have hung out, I'm not going to be blatant like the company you just talked about, Salesforce, but that I feel like I represent my company. Like, you guys can come after us, right? I mean, I'm not scared. I'm really not, and we run our company like we're not scared, and we build things like we're not scared. And now all of those things that 3 or 4 years ago I saw as disadvantages or things I was trying to hide are really it's become crystal clear that those are our advantages, right? We're not this huge behemoth with all these huge legal documents and these cumbersome implementation processes, and call 7 people for support and triage this and all these levels. And we're not none of that. We're dynamic and we're fast and we're personable, and we just are who we are. And that is because we're a small beginning company. But what it's really allowed us to do is set our feet underneath us with regard to the expectation that our customers have, the quality of our product, how we build things, how our salespeople interact with people, and the relationships that we've cultivated. And so I lean into it heavy. I don't know if I'd pay protesters, but there's nothing that scares me anymore. Like we talked about earlier offline, there's now big companies that do pieces of what we do, and it is what it is. They do what they do, we do what we do. Some people are going to see value in the way they do it. I feel like a lot of people see value in the way we do things. And that's the way I'm going to approach our marketing, our social media, our interactions with our clients, because when we've done best, and had the best results is when we are ourselves. We're not pretending to be anybody else. We're not speaking in a manner that isn't, natural to the way we actually are, because our customers like us, right? So why should we speak in a different tone? Why should we present things one way versus another? And that's kind of my 2 cents on it. And I think that it's interesting because you're the one who kind of on the social media side brought that to light for me, which is like, be funny, like put different kinds of content out there. Now it's like whenever we put something out, it's like, is that us talking, or is it us trying to be somebody else and talk, right? And once we do that, that's like our gauge for whether or not we put something out or talk to somebody or do whatever it is that we need to do.
Love that. I think that's a perfect note to end on, because you encapsulated it very, very well.